Welcome, dear listeners. I'm Jonathan Carlin.
And I'm Benjamin Carlin.
And we invite you to join us through the Griffin door, your one-way ticket to the enchanting world of Harry Potter. So grab your wands and dust off your broomsticks and join us as we unlock the treasures behind Chamber of Secrets, Chapter 4, Flourish and Blotts.
Oh, man. So I feel like we left last episode potentially on like a glorious cliffhanger as to your thoughts for the Chapter 4 thumbnail art here.
The chapter art for Flourish and Blotts. I mean, it's a 12 out of 10, Ben. I mean, maybe the best chapter art in any book, in all 7 books. We might have peaked right here.
It's pretty peak Gilderoy for sure. He is so spot on, so silly, so goofy with a sparkling smile, and his book has the exact same face.
Silly. I know.
Oh, man. It's this idea of like wizards wearing hats, like the one that Gilderoy is wearing in the chapter art for this one, is also like, I feel like it's highly introduced in the beginning, but then it feels like kind of forgotten eventually.
Yeah, that like wizards wear hats.
Yes, yeah. Like your classic wizard's hat. So he's got his little stars there going on. I think there's a little moon right on the end of his hat.
Oh, there is. Yeah, like it almost like it's such a funny photo because I love that he smiling is holding a book of himself smiling in the exact same way, and then he's supposed to be this like super famous like fashionable guy, but then like even like it's like so gaudy at the same time. Like his hat, even in black and white, clashes horribly with his robes.
Yeah,
It's like not the same color pattern. It's not even the same like pattern of stars. You know, it's like the robe has stars and moons, and his hat has just stars with like the little moon at the end. But it's just, it's so wonderful. I love it. It's hilarious and silly and just such an introduction to the character.
It is such an introduction to the character. It's really funny. And I also love that you wrote 12 out of 10 because I wrote 11 out of 10. Just wow. A+ and 3 gold stars.
Amazing.
That was my hyper analysis there of our chapter art. So
there you go.
Yes.
Very good. Well, so I'm sure you guys all agreed endlessly. And if you saw the thumbnail ahead of time, you were like, wow, amazing. 10 out of 10 chapter art, if not higher. And you'd have nothing but personal agreements about it. So let us know if you disagree, but I feel like it's almost impossible. Anyway, so Flourish and Blotts, this is a pretty interesting chapter looking way down the line in some scenarios, but then also just sort of it's where the thing happens that sets up the book. It's like where the diary is sort of introduced.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of it's an interesting chapter in that way because you get introductions to some super key characters that we haven't met before at all. There's some super key artifacts that end up being vitally important as time goes on. Kind of an interesting chapter to unpack where it was kind of like I got to the end of it and then was almost being like I was having like more thoughts and having to like go back and find specific passages and like re-highlight and add more notes and stuff. So my chapter is actually pretty scribbled in for this one.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot happening in this one for sure. So I love, we touched on this a ton in the last chapter, but I loved even just the opening sentence. Life at the Burrow was as different as possible from life on Privet Drive. It's like, yes, it is.
It is indeed, yes. And, it's funny because this is like something that we've touched on a few different times. And I feel like maybe I like was able to step back from it and sort of like gleam the important bits. But the very next sentence is, the Dursleys liked everything neat and ordered. The Weasleys' house burst with the strange and unexpected. And this is, it's kind of something that I like, especially as I get older. I like. It's a sentiment that I could almost struggle with because there is something really, really nice about your house being clean.
Well, okay, I think you're right. It is like one of those things where it's like, well, there's nothing wrong with being clean. It's like there's nothing wrong with being clean, but the Dursleys are almost like sterile. Like they're clean for almost the wrong reasons. They're clean because it is a matter of like conforming and because it is like a matter of adhering to their imagined standards of like normality. Whereas like if your house is clean, it's simply because it improves the living quality. If you're like organized and clean and stuff at your house, you're not like necessarily adhering to conformity as much as you are trying to make like a more comfortable, enjoyable place for you to like habitate.
Yes.
Right.
And that's exactly it, and I think like when you look at even like Hermione as a character in general, like she's a very like neat and orderly person in a way that doesn't come across as like like problematically so. So I think
Right.
I think your sterile line there is exactly right. It's like I think they even describe Petunia's kitchens as being like surgically clean. And
Yes.
it's like, okay, like that is taking it too far. And it's like she's clearly bought into something that has told her that this is like of utmost importance, and she's trying to do it to such an extreme level that it's like, okay, well, now you're just not making the space hospitable for anyone.
Right. Yeah.
Yourself included. Though.
Right. Yeah. It's not even better for them to live in.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So anyway, I think that's sort of like the delineation there, because we've said several times as the podcast has progressed, like magic is messy and that's kind of fun, but it's also like then as a grown adult with a 2-year-old, it's like I don't like messy.
Yeah.
Like
right. Like pick up oh god, I can't move in this room, or there has definitely been times where my son Luke's room is like so cluttered with things that like just being in his room makes me like physically shake. I'm like, Luke, I'm sorry, I can't be in here right now. I need to leave.
I you know what? I'm gonna have to sit, breathe it out a little bit.
Know.
Yeah, this is
We're
not what the
gonna try
Weasleys
again.
meant.
Yeah, this is it's not Weasley.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's perfect. Then we get the next line, though, where they have a mirror over the kitchen mantle, and it shouts at Harry, "Tuck in your shirt, Scruffy," which is one of those lines that I would have bet you $12,000 happened at
The Leaky Cauldron.
The Leaky
I mean,
Cauldron.
I have a note right here that says, does this happen at the Leaky Cauldron? And the answer is yes, there is a second mirror at the Leaky Cauldron, which also talks to Harry and is like a little snarky with him. I don't think it says this exact line, but it does happen again with a different mirror.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better, because I was like, I would swear up and down that is where this scene happens, and apparently it happens here instead. And it's like, it almost seems odd to me and out of place again in the Weasley's house, where it's like, it doesn't seem like they would have a rude mirror.
Yeah, right. Like if this is a mirror that has a problem with a little bit of scruff, then it must constantly be bothered.
It's got a lot to say.
It's got a lot to say. Yeah.
It even seems more in line with like number 12 Grimmauld Place.
Right.
You know, like kind of right next to the portrait of Sirius's mother. It's
Right. Like she's yelling at you, the mirror's yelling at you. Like,
yes, yeah.
Jeez, man, you're an embarrassment.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, there's that. We have the ghoul in the attic, which the ghoul is always kind of one of those random things where I'm like, is the ghoul there on purpose? Is it like...
did they like take it in?
Exactly. Yeah. Or is this some type of sort of like, some houses have ghouls. It's like,
we can't get rid of it.
You got ghouls.
You got a ghoul. It's like, it does seem like, can you not get rid of it?
Yeah.
Like, what's the problem? Do you want it up there?
It reminds me of those insurance commercials where it's like, we moved into a new house and it's great, but it has ants.
Right.
And what they mean is like ants.
Yeah, like
family.
AUNTS.
Yes,
yeah.
aunts.
Aunts.
Are there.
That is one of the best commercials ever, though. It's got ants and they're just like criticizing everything. They're basically just literally Aunt Petunias walking around the house being like, it's a lot of house.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But I mean, literally, like 2 of the aunts in that commercial are named Rose and Joan, and like my wife Beth literally has an Aunt Rose and an Aunt Joan, and it's just like, it makes me laugh so hard that they got the names exactly right for the aunts.
That is
like,
so funny.
There's no way.
Right. That's like one of those like, am I on the Truman Show?
Joni's here. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man,
It's got ants.
so that's the question though with the ghouls. Is that just like having ants? They're just sort of it's like, well, it's something we live with. You get used to it. Yeah.
There's a ghoul in the attic, and I'm like, you getting rid of that? Like, excuse me, not an option.
It's not really.
It's like part of the house.
You don't really get rid of it, you know.
You have a ghoul,
right?
You just have a ghoul. It's
We
like
have
a
ghouls.
poltergeist,
right?
But there must be some sort of delineation, or else I'd call it a poltergeist.
Good point.
So I don't know about that. I love how there's also it says there's small explosions from Fred and George's bedroom were considered perfectly normal, which just sounds like they're 1,000% doing magic.
Yeah, almost certainly.
Like Mr. and Mrs. Weasley must have they just like resigned themselves. Like, yes, some magic happens in the house against the rules. That like we cannot possibly enforce it.
Yeah, no, I mean, especially with the determination and will of people like Fred and George,
right?
Where it's just sort of like there's really no way around it. Like they're going to do it.
They will do it.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
It's just like having ghouls.
Exactly.
There's nothing you can do about it.
Exactly. It also seems crazy to me that like even if you like took away the rule seems so. I have 1,000 questions and problems with the trace as a concept, but it's like even if like you like took away their wands, like wandless magic is still a thing. Like would you be not allowed to do wandless magic?
Right,
you know?
right. Like Harry, like making the glass disappear at the zoo. Or
But like,
jumping on
there's
the
like
chimney.
there's like wizard schools that are canon where like they don't even use wands; they just teach wandless magic.
Right. Like that's the thing too, is that like, you know, you learn about the emotional outbursts of like wizards or witches who will eventually learn to harness it, like between like birth and age, like 11ish, when they get their letters for school. But like, there's a lot to be said for the fact that ages 11 to 17 are also like highly emotional eras of your life where you're almost absolutely going to inadvertently be causing some amount of magic.
Yes,
So,
almost inadvertently. But then like even like Voldemort before he's even like Tom Riddle at age 11 is like purposefully doing controlled wandless magic.
And that's one of those things too, where it's like you almost have to imagine the ministry was detecting these like alerts and being like, okay, we get it. Yep, we will send somebody as soon as possible with haste. Like we know that there is someone here who can do magic, and it's like that is like it's so unusual that this orphanage is having so many instances of magic happening.
Yeah,
but they had to have assumed that it was all unintentional,
right?
But that's like probably more of a testament to Tom Riddle's own power. Where
that's
it's
true.
Like it's like he was doing it on purpose,
right? Yeah. I love the line too. So the thing that's the most different is the fact that everyone there seemed to like him, and it's like, oh, what a gut punch!
I know,
just like,
I know.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, I've said it before, but it kind of goes back to the same thing for these first few books. It's like I feel like the amount, like the actual genuinely limited amount of time that we ever spend with the Dursleys, and how well you inherently understand that it is not a good place for Harry to have to go back to, and then the ever looming threat of the expulsion thing, that just seems to like keep coming up, especially like in the next couple of books as well. It's just sort of like it's like. It's like the main reason that that's such a dire concern, other than obviously like, you know, missing out on like learning all this cool new magic stuff, is just like it means life for the Dursleys forever.
It means life for the Dursleys. It's like it feels like Dumbledore could have just pulled him aside and been like, look, you know, follow the rules and stuff, but like you're the chosen one, so like don't worry, like we're gonna take care of you. You're not gonna have to live with them in the end, no matter what. Okay, like it's best if you do because protection, but also, like, don't worry, like you're coming back,
dude. That would have been the nicest thing. Like Dumbledore's whole thing is sort of like, well, I wanted to make sure you had some version of like a normal life. It's like just tell him this information.
I know.
Tell him he is not doomed to live there forever.
Right? Yeah. You don't have to know him as the chosen one. Just be like, don't worry.
Right.
You don't. You will not have to live there.
Right. We all get it.
We all get it.
They are not nice. Anyway.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah. It is such a gut punch. Super sad.
Then there's Mr. Weasley asking Harry to explain how things like plugs and the postal service worked, which like also it's funny to me. There's two things about this. One, it's funny to me that he thinks a 12-year-old knows how like plugs work, but because like I couldn't like describe to you the way in which like a plug works after you plug it into the wall.
Oh my gosh, no, I know. I remember the first time I had my aquarium store back in like 2008, and I remember I was trying to install new outlets, and so I like went to the store, and this is not advisable, by the way. Always hire an electrician instead. And I was trying to like do it on my own, and like run wires and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a customer who was an electrician. I was like, yeah, I can't get this plug to work, and I like showed him all of the weird wiring that I did, where I was just like making it up, attempting to interpret like the intended like function, and he was like, I see your logic, but this is not even remotely close to correct.
Wow.
And I mean, it was like, it like I had done like such a ridiculous configuration.
Were you just like guessing, or did you like look anything up?
No, I was just guessing.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
just straight up guessing.
Wow.
Yeah, so huge hazard.
Okay.
In the end.
The other thing that's about this though is that like for Mr. Weasley, who is someone who is like genuinely interested in Muggle artifacts and like fascinated by them and like wants to know how they work, like. You know, to me, I plug it into the wall, electricity comes out. I don't think about it. Like he is interested to know how that works,
like how and why it works.
But like to me, like, and I don't know if this is just like in the age of the internet, which obviously he has no concept of or anything. But like even like it feels to me like if I wanted to know how a plug worked, I could know how it worked by the end of today.
Oh, sure.
You know,
Yeah.
like the information, even if I didn't have the internet, I feel like I could go to a library and be like, I'm looking for stuff about like electricity and how plugs work or how to install something in my home. And they'd be like, yeah, we have books about that. Of course.
I
right
know.
over here. Like, it seems like if he's so fascinated, it just seems so learnable.
It does, but it's like this is what I wrote down. Because I also kind of highlighted the same area, and I said it's really so interesting to try and get into the head and perspective of someone who can perform magic, because it's like all I'm trying to think is like if you were to go to like a remote tribe, like deep in a jungle, and try to see like the way in which they were able to replicate a common piece of like technology that we're used to having,
right?
Like a hammock or something like that, you
Yeah.
know, and like weaving it together out of like, you know, the materials that are potentially on hand, or turning like a piece of bamboo into like a sleeping situation or something. It's like, man, without like modern tools, it's amazing to me to see how you were able to come up with what is otherwise a solution very similar to like what our ultimate outcome is.
Right.
But we have like power tools and such.
Yeah.
And so his specific line is ingenious, really, how many muggles have found a way of getting along without magic. And I feel like that's like you might go and see like this remote tribe and be like, man, it's kind of brilliant that you were able to figure this out. Like,
right. Yeah.
You know, and I think that's probably like, it's like you take for granted so much of like what the technology you have at your disposal solves for you, and in this case their technology isn't technology at all, it's
just magic.
It's just magic. So I think it like certain processes that you have to figure out, like because you are forced to solve these problems, you know, gives you just a completely different manner of thinking.
I guess so. I guess you're like I don't think that hard about like electricity or something, but for him, I'm sure it would be like, wait a minute, so like there's like a, you guys built a wall on a lake and then you let the water out, and that's turning on the lights in your house, or
yes,
you know,
referring to building a
it'd
dam,
be like making a dam for like hydroelectric power or something. Yeah,
right, exactly. And that's the type of thing that must seem like so completely strange and foreign.
Yeah, I can see. I guess so, because the other thing is, I guess he is like pure blood, so it's like he has never lived in the Muggle world at all.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe even like the kinds of things they'd have at like, I don't know. It's like crazy to me that because like, but like libraries exist in the wizarding world. It's like, does he not think libraries exist in the Muggle world?
Sure, that's a good point as well.
And given his profession, it just seems like he should know
given his
more than the average person about how Muggle stuff works.
Not only his profession, but his hobby of like being able to successfully like magicify, you know, the Flying Fort Anglia. Like, even that alone suggests like you must, because it says he took apart and put back together the car.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's an impressive amount of knowledge to then also not know how something as common as like a household plug would work.
Right. I suppose there is like this line that like technology doesn't like work at Hogwarts. There's like too much magic in the air. So like maybe the act of just being a wizard and trying to fiddle with like electronics, like it just like, even if you're doing it right, maybe it just doesn't work.
Sure.
Or something.
Yeah. Well, and this is another one too, like where I think, anything can sound like techno babble, like the Marvel universe. I feel like, and especially I think it was Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like there's a line where Scott Lang is like, you can't just throw quantum in front of everything and make it sound like important or whatever.
Right.
And I think that this is like one of those where it's like, oftentimes as you're ever entering like a new arena that has a whole bunch of like terminology and everything attached to it.
Yeah.
Certain things can sound highly complicated, and your preliminary understanding of how those things work can then make you feel like you know a lot about a given topic. So like, again, if I were to go like back into my aquarium days, it's like if I were to start explaining to you like solenoid valves on my calcium reactor or something like that might sound like technobabble.
Right.
And if somebody was like attempting to sound smart to me about aquariums and reference that they know what a calcium reactor is, it would become very obvious to me very quickly whether or not they actually know how one works,
right,
or if they've ever used one before, because like it is a complex thing. So it's like you might know the vernacular, you might know to ask, oh, do you run a calcium reactor? And that's very different from knowing how one works.
Right, sure.
And so I think sometimes that, I don't know. Yeah. So I think that like his lack of knowledge, I think like it does seem surprising to me, but I also like I feel like I also get it. I think that there's something there, so I don't know. But yeah, Mr. Weasley and his fascination with all things Muggles. Like, I mean, it's just like I think the number of times I could probably write just like and I even scribbled it in at least one other line where he asked about the escapaders.
Escalators.
Yeah. I just said LOL. I love Mr. Weasley. I feel like I could do that like with everything he asks.
Yeah.
I'm just always like I'm just so interested in all the questions he wants to know more about.
Right. Yeah. Why has this thing stood out to you amongst all of the Muggle inventions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Well, speaking of which, they get their letters from school. And Mr. Weasley points out that Dumbledore already knows you're here, Harry. Doesn't miss a trick, that man. Yes. So, which to me, I think is interesting that so when Mr. Weasley sees this, he attributes Dumbledore's knowledge or the fact that the owl came to Harry is Dumbledore is the one who addressed the letters and sends them out. So does that mean that Dumbledore was the one tracking Harry around last year through the different rooms of the Dursleys' house and to the hotel and to the hut on the rock and stuff like that?
I feel like it has to be
right.
And this is another one where it's like maybe this is like the trace coming in, like in a good way, like where it's kind of like now we know the exact like positioning. Although that would break down very quickly once you applied it to like Fred and George having explosions coming from their room,
right?
Because it would be like third floor on the left.
Right.
Room with bunk beds or whatever.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I always assume there's some sort of magic to the owls and the way they just know where stuff is. Because fast forward to Goblet of Fire, Harry will send Hedwig to go find Sirius, and he'll be like, "Take this to Sirius," and he has no idea where, not even on Earth Sirius is, because he's switching countries and stuff.
True, yes.
And Hedwig will find him.
Right.
And it's just well, how did that work?
That I do think is magic.
Yeah,
I think
right.
It's got to be magical positioning or something about the owls that is very unique, which also makes you wonder whether or not these are magical owls versus your everyday owls.
Oh, right. Yeah, because there a difference between magical owls and regular owls, or all owls magical, or
I like that better.
Yeah,
all owls are magical.
All owls are magical. Just there's too many of them, and Muggles know about them.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the preferred way of thinking.
All right. So anyway, they get there. This is where your next introduction to Gilderoy Lockhart here is that you see that the second year students, or basically every single year's worth of students, requires every single Gilderoy Lockhart book, which has got to be just one of the greatest scams ever.
I know. He has got to be making a flat out killing.
So much. He's selling. How many books do they have to get of his? 7. There are 7 Gilderoy Lockhart books and at least 200 students at Hogwarts. He is just selling books like crazy right now.
Yes. No, it's hilarious to me because you literally get the Standard Book of Spells, Grade 2 by Miranda Goshawk, which this is a fun continuity thing where it's there's a Standard Book of Spells for every year, and
right.
It's always written by Miranda Goshawk.
Yeah.
So that's a fun throwback. But that it stands to reason though that back in their first year when they bought Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Scamander, it's there are certain books that you're just able to use year in, year out, because that's the other thing too, is that in my mind I was did he somehow convince Snape is Holiday with Hags somehow a potions book, these, or are all of these books attached to the Defense Against the Dark Arts class that they're going to be taking?
I've assumed that they are all specifically for Defense Against the Dark Arts.
So that would normally mean that for second year students, you would typically only actually need 2 books, whatever the DADA book would be, and then the Standard Book of Spells Grade 2.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, if Lockhart wasn't there, would you only have to buy 2 books?
Yes.
Yes. Or I've always sort of assumed that we just don't get to see the rest of the list. They just sort of stop there.
I guess that's also possible.
But you're right. Otherwise, that'd be interesting too if you just had to. Because you're right. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, or 1,000 Magical Herbs and Fungi.
Yes.
Could still conceivably just be yes. We didn't cover all 1,000 in the first year.
Right.
So
only covered 1/8.
Right, and you're still going to be using a lot of them for potions and stuff like that. So
right.
Whatever, whatever the potions book was, probably didn't make every single potion in the book or whatever. So that would be crazy if it's instead of having to buy 2 books per student, you now have to buy 8.
Yes,
which is
yes.
Also, it seems so silly to me that. like it seems like such a red flag that if you're that every single year, because Fred and George's list are the same. So it's like, why are the books the same for each different year of Defense Against the Dark Arts? Like, why would it seems weird to me that like second year students would need the same books as like seventh year students.
Oh, I know. Well, I mean, and that's the thing is that it's like I wonder if at all like part of like Lockhart, like I wonder if Lockhart has an agent, and Lockhart's agent was like, sure, he'll come teach Defense Against the Dark Arts.
Right.
Every single student needs to buy his entire collection.
Exactly.
You know, and it's like, I mean, and when it really comes down to it, it doesn't seem very likely at all that Lockhart has any intention of successfully teaching them anything at all.
Oh, I know.
He just
Like
wants to
imagine you just see. It seems so obvious that you'd be a fraud so quickly. Like especially like the seventh year students or something. You know, like because he doesn't really teach anyone anything. He just tells them stories.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
of
like
his own heroics.
Of his own heroics, and it just seems like it'd be so obvious that you weren't good at doing anything.
I know. Well, I mean, again, this goes back to that Dumbledore's big plan thing, where it's like Lockhart is specifically hired.
Yes.
For one key purpose.
Which, yeah, to show Harry how not to be.
Yes, precisely.
Basically.
Yep.
Anyway, let's see. There's I love this. So after we get this, Harry speaks to Ginny and he says, "Oh, were you starting at Hogwarts this year?" Like this at this point, Harry has lived there for like a week, and so like a week later, it hasn't come up at all that Ginny is going to Hogwarts this year.
I know,
like,
I know.
Poor Ginny, who's sitting there like literally speechless, in love with Harry.
Right,
and he hasn't even taken enough notice to know that she's going to school this year.
Right. Yes, yeah.
Like, oh,
it's like, oh, come on, Harry, man, pick up on something.
Jeez,
like,
dude.
This is like another one of those where it's also like him and Ron have just also been best friends for a whole year. It's kind of like when he like got into his room and didn't like, it was like, oh, you like the Chudley Cannons, huh? It's like, somehow this didn't come up from our whole year of friendship. It's like at no point in time it was relevant news that like I have a younger sister who will be starting next year.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. This actually, you know what this reminds me of though? It doesn't, maybe it is a little more believable because some days, like, I will come home from work and my wife, Beth, will be like, how was everyone's weekend? You know, what everyone get up to? And I'll be like, oh, I guess, Ben and Alice went to some restaurant or, you know, whatever you told me, I'll just say that back verbatim. And then she'll have like 7 follow-up questions about it, like, who did they go with? Or like, what did they get? Or, you know, like, who watched Addie or whatever. And I'm just like, yes.
There were more questions I could have asked.
Ben went to dinner, and that's what I know.
Right. Yeah, so not nearly as much information as
right.
Exchange. That's a good point.
Yeah, it was like, but it does. On that note, though, it does seem like sports would have come up for Ron and Quidditch and the Chudley Cannons.
It does indeed.
Yeah.
Yep.
With your best bud.
Yeah. In other news, though, then we've got. Percy entering the scene. He was already dressed. Like I love how he was already dressed, and it was like it's almost like I'm judging him for already being dressed because Fred and George came in their pajamas, and it's like, well, clearly Fred and George have it right. And I'm like, what would he be doing already being dressed? But then it says his Hogwarts prefect badge pinned to his sweater vest, and I wrote in his own home, audible eye roll.
I know. Like, why are you wearing the badge around outside of school, dude?
Right. It has no authority here.
I know. It's just like, I wanted you all to remember, in case you forgot, that I'm a prefect.
Yes, indeed.
The highest honor anyone could have at this age.
We have not forgotten Percy.
Yes, no one has forgotten. It does seem silly to wear it around. That'd be like, you may as well just be wearing your school uniform around the house. Be like, dude, we're not in class yet. What are you doing?
I know.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. But then, I mean, on the flip side, though, we'll find out in a few minutes that Hermione has been like feverishly working away on schoolwork all summer break. And it's like, well, maybe they have some similarities.
There is some of that. I mean, there are some similarities between them. Yeah, I highlighted that as well, where in Hermione's letter she says, "I'm very busy with schoolwork, of course." And Ron's like, "How can she be?" said Ron and her. "We're on vacation." And it's like, that's true. And yet, the very next year, I think they do have homework over summer break.
Do they?
I think so, because like Harry is like, it's like Harry Potter was not like most kids. For one, he wanted to be doing his schoolwork.
True.
And then it's like one of those like, let me remind you how much Snape hates Harry, because he would love nothing more than to give him a failing grade and on the first day,
right,
or something.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
But it's like also, but like, yeah, he's right. How can she be? Because they don't apparently have homework this time.
Well, I know. And then the other thing that I wrote in here was like, she also like we know that in about a week they're going to meet up to get their books. So it's like, it's not even like she's just like studying the books that she's going to need for the upcoming.
Oh yeah, it's not like she's got new books and she's like, well, I'm doing schoolwork in the ways that I'm reading my new books.
Exactly.
Right.
Which is always one of those things like whenever I think about Hermione doing this, I'm like, man, how much would I absolutely have crushed school if before the school year started I had already read the whole textbook?
Oh, that'd be crazy.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, you'd be so ahead.
Yes.
So.
If only I was so motivated to be great at school when I was 11.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't. Not so much.
Oh, well. Maybe if you're like a wizard, though, and you have to go back to the muggle world and just live with your dentist parents, and they're just like, Hermione, you're so great. And she's probably just dying to get back there the whole time. Like,
it seems like it, because Hermione spends next to no time whatsoever with her family.
I know. Yeah. She's like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah. It's like year one holiday, she goes home. And then I feel like every other occasion after that, she's pretty much like, yeah, no, I'm going to go and stay with the Weasleys.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's
I'm
pretty
gonna
much
stay in
it.
school this year.
Yes. All right, so there's fun trivia on the next page here, where there's a couple of things that happen. One, they all go to play like Quidditch and stuff, and I think they like ask Percy to come with them. They'd ask Percy if he wanted to join them, but he said he was busy, which is like a little bit more of that like, what could you be busy with, dude?
Yeah.
But it is interesting that they asked Percy, because it means like at some point there must have been a point in their childhood where like Fred and George and Bill and Charlie and like Percy would go play Quidditch together.
Yeah.
You know, he could go play Quidditch. Like, they don't think he couldn't do it.
Right.
You know, which is kind of like, you never imagine Percy being athletic in any capacity at all, but he must be enough to the point where they included him.
Right. So
is interesting.
It's hard to imagine Percy on a broom.
It is extremely hard to imagine. Although in this same note, they do ask Percy, who does not join them, but they don't ask Ginny.
What's up with that?
I know, which is like such a bummer, because she's like actually turns out to be amazing at it. So
I know.
I think that's funny.
That is funny.
But so then there's this other line about how, everyone loves Harry's Nimbus 2000, which was easily the best broom. But then Ron's old shooting star was often outstripped by passing butterflies. And I'm always like, which one? Sometimes I'll think about like when we're like up at the lake, or our little like Vermont cabin.
Yes.
There's been times where we've been like, zipping along on the boat, and I'll have noticed there's like a butterfly keeping pace with the boat, and I'll be like, what is happening here?
It's like,
how fast are butterflies?
What would have been even funnier is if you were like in that moment looking at the butterfly following the boat and being like, man, Ron's broom is so fast.
Yeah. I think what's happening in that case is that the butterfly is getting in some sort of slipstream, and that's how it's keeping up with the boat, because I do not think they are that fast.
I know. Yeah. What is the average wind speed velocity?
So I learned this about butterflies. The way they fly is with both up and down of their wings.
Okay.
It's like when they flap down, that is how they go up, and then when they close at the top, they like touch, and that's what propels them forward. So they like press down to go up and then flap back to go forward.
Oh, that's amazing.
I know. I was like, boy, that was a really fun fact I learned over the weekend.
Man.
Anyway, I only bring this up. The point is that the point is that butterflies are slow, and Ron's shooting star is even slower than a butterfly.
Based on Harry's own assessment here, my question is like, is this hyperbole? Like, or is it actually that slow?
No, I think it is. Okay, so I looked this up. So in Quidditch Through the Ages, we learn that the shooting star brooms were started being produced in 1955 by Universal Brooms Limited, which even when they came out, like even a brand new shooting star, if you got it, was considered like cheap and sort of poor quality, and they were known for losing speed over the years.
Okay.
So like the longer you have it, the slower it will go. And that said, the company goes out of business in 1978. So Ron's broom at this point is minimum 14 years old, if not like 26 years old.
So it's like it was not good to begin with,
Right?
And then continued to be worse.
Right. Yeah. So even brand new, not great, and now he has a really old, crummy broom. So it actually makes sense that he's passed by butterflies. Although at this point, it just seems like if you're passed by butterflies, you're just sort of sitting on like a floating stick.
I know.
You know?
Yeah, I know. It's like it seems so slow. The other thing is, I mean, what's kind of hilarious about this though, because we know that Charlie Weasley was exceptionally good at Quidditch.
Yeah.
What it almost reminds me of, and this is going to seem like such a geeky or nerdy comparison to such a jock-driven sport.
Yeah.
But I do remember having a computer game when we were kids called Tiberian Sun.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It was so much fun.
Command and Conquer Tiberian Sun.
Exactly. And I remember we had this like really old computer. And
We
it
did.
was so painstakingly slow. And so the end result was that like you were really bad at the game because everything took forever to load.
Yes.
And it was like one of these things where it's like, I basically never won a game ever. And then I remember going over to one of your friends' houses, and I think you guys were playing out on the trampoline, and they had like a brand new computer, and I sat down to play it, and I was like, I am like a god in this game right now.
Right.
Because everything loads as fast as it's supposed to. So it's like, I am unbeatable.
I do remember this exact phenomenon happening to myself where like, yeah, I mean, if you don't know, it was like a real-time strategy game where, you know, you'd have to like build a base and you could build units and you'd go attack another base. And it was like, I mean, it was so, I would play it today.
Oh, I absolutely
Like
would,
I've
yes.
played other real-time strategy games, not as fun. Like nothing has ever lived up to
Tiberian Sun.
to Tiberian Sun in my mind. And I've even looked in the present in 2024 like for ways to play. Like, is it on Steam? Can I do it? It's like, no, for whatever reason, they haven't, you know, brought it up the line
Yes.
to play yet. But someday I'll relive the glory that is Tiberian Sun. But I remember, sitting there like, you know, I think if you wanted to make like infantry in that game, I remember on a fast computer, you could make them about as fast as you could click.
Yes.
You know, it was like click and they're ready. And on our computer, it was like, they were still the fastest thing you could make, but it would take like 30 seconds for one to be like trained or whatever.
Yes.
And let me tell you, that's way slower. Like way, way, way slower. Games could take like 4 hours.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. So the big thing that stands out to me though would be like if Charlie was training on these brooms,
Yeah.
and like potentially even if he like had the school broom, which was just like a little bit faster,
Right.
It's like all of a sudden it's like wow,
Right, like took the ankle weights off, didn't we?
yes, because I mean it seems like all the Weasleys are so good.
That's
you know,
true.
at
That's true.
Quidditch,
Maybe
so
this is like their secret strategy.
Yes,
It's
yes.
like Goku training with the weighted clothing.
That's it.
Yes.
Precisely.
Exactly.
Man,
And in high gravity.
raise your hand if you followed every reference we just made just now.
Absolutely you did. I'm sure you did.
I know people are. It's like they come for the Harry Potter deep dive, and then they stay for the Tiberian Sun.
They stay for the Tiberian Sun Dragon Ball Z comparisons.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay, but Ben, one of my favorite theories ever spawns from the next paragraph here. Where they're trying to wonder like what Percy's doing in his room all summer. And Fred says, wish I knew what he was up to. He's not himself. His exam results came back the day before yours did. 12 OWLs, and he hardly gloated at all. 12 OWLs, Ben. Do you know what's crazy about that?
Is that Hermione doesn't even get 12?
Hermione
WLs.
doesn't get 12. She gets 10, I believe, right? Because she
10.
drops 2 classes, and she gets, obviously, an OWL number of class she's taking. But before that, she was taking all 12 classes,
Yep.
which means, and the only way she was able to do it was by the use of a time turner.
Yes.
Meaning that Percy is also taking all 12 classes and gets a passing grade in all 12, which means Percy almost definitely also had to be using a time turner.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I mean, there's no two ways about it. And then Bill as well, because Bill got 12 too.
Bill got 12 too. And honestly, it's sort of like, it almost makes more, I almost like this better because it makes more sense that Hermione is given one. It's as if like, yes, frequently this is a solution to the problem.
Right,
Like
right.
we have to like we have to fill some paperwork out and we have to like make exceptions. But like, yes, they're just good students a lot.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like, and I think that you're exactly right. Like, it sets the baseline for like Hermione getting one to a point that is like much more like it makes much more sense because I think the 3 people that we know get 12 OWLs are Percy, Bill, and Barty Crouch Jr.
Yeah, Barty Crouch Jr.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Which means he had one too.
Oh my gosh, which I mean, it's not surprising that Barty Crouch Jr. gets one either because I mean, he's so good. Like it is such a bummer to me that you don't get to see him in action outside of being Mad Eye Moody.
I know.
Because like that guy was so dangerous.
I know. Yeah. If you could imagine just like year 5 where there's Bellatrix and Barty Crouch Jr., it's like Voldemort's basically unstoppable.
Right.
Like,
what is the other interesting thing about like Percy getting 12 OWLs is that it means he gets an OWL in divination.
I know.
It's like he successfully does it. So like, does Percy have any amount of like good at predicting the futureness about him? Because like when Harry goes to do it, he has to like look in a crystal ball or something, and like, you know, either something happens or it doesn't.
It feels like one of those classes that like defies traditional like studiousness.
Yeah.
So it's like he must have been able to like crack the code on Trelawney somehow.
Right. Yeah. Because Trelawney would have been his professor, and like we sort of know she's like she's a bit of a fraud. Well, it's hard to say. It's like her teaching is fraudulent, even though she herself is constantly making correct predictions and is a true seer.
Yes.
Yeah. So
it's a good point.
And yet, Percy gets an OWL.
Yeah, he did.
So maybe it's a lot of outside studying. I don't know.
Could be.
But yeah, that's pretty interesting to me. And in my head, there's no doubt about it. Percy, 1,000% had a time turner. Maybe even still does. I don't know.
You think so?
Well, I don't know. Maybe
like for classes past.
Maybe for classes now. Or would you maybe not? Maybe you like narrow in at this point and start dropping some classes.
Yeah, because I mean, you take fewer classes at NEWT status anyway.
That's true.
So
yeah.
I could see being more specific.
So at this point, back down.
Back down.
But so he'd have been 3 years of time turnering. Probably.
Amazing.
At least. On the very next page, there was another theory. Boy, this chapter was just full of them. Surprisingly, I don't remember like referencing this particular chapter a lot, but this is when Harry first gets introduced to Floo Powder.
Yes.
Because he's going to accidentally end up in Nocturne Alley here in a second. And this, like, the way that Floo Powder works is one of my favorite theories that we've ever come up with. And our theory is that it is just made, the secret formula for Floo Powder is made with phoenix ashes.
Yes.
Because, as you know, in Order of the Phoenix, I'm sure you remember, at one point, even though you cannot magically transport yourself in and out of Hogwarts via traditional, like, apparition, Dumbledore is still able to utilize Fawkes to like basically travel by fire out of the castle.
Yep.
So like it is a way, so you know that phoenixes can travel by fire in like a teleportation fashion, extremely similar to Floo Powder, which is, you know, you use fire to travel from one place to another, basically like by teleporting.
Yep.
You can use Floo Powder inside of Hogwarts, and obviously Fawkes also works inside of Hogwarts. So like whatever limits are there are not there. But then there's like the person who created it, Ignatia Wildsmith.
That sounds right.
Who I want to say had like this random second coming when Hogwarts Legacy came out, because like the way you move around the map is with like the Floo Powder and stuff like that in the stations.
Gotcha.
Every time you like pass one of her little statues, she like says one of like 2 lines to you, and so people are like super annoyed with Ignatia.
Okay.
Anyway, besides the point. There's like this weird like Pottermore article about her where it's like they never answer the door if you knock on the door in Diagon Alley, that like for whatever reason they will not answer the door if you knock on it, which is just like a random inclusion. Why is that? But then also they're the only known producers of Floo Powder ever. And they claim that the price of Floo Powder will be 2 sickles no matter what forever, and like it will not change. Which is like there's why are all of these things included? What a bunch of random anomalies and stuff. But it's like our theory was that the reason they don't answer the door is because they don't want you to come in and see how they're making the Floo Powder.
Right.
And the reason
Highly
they have such a constant supply of it and have had such a constant supply of it for such a long time is because they're just harvesting phoenix ashes. And so they have a continuous, never-ending supply because the phoenixes are always just completely reborn.
Right. So you would never, like, there is no, like, normally prices are dictated by supply and demand.
Right.
And there is a like the supply for it it's a static constant.
Exactly.
You have, and I think the other thing that we added into this theory is that it also explains possibly where Ollivander is getting his phoenix feathers.
Exactly.
For wands.
It does, because he advertises that he uses unicorn tail hairs, dragon heartstrings, or phoenix feathers. But in the canon, at least during Harry's time, the only 2 phoenix feather wands we know of are Harry's and Voldemort's.
Right.
And if those are the only 2 he's made in the last 50 years, then like he can hardly advertise that he uses all 3.
Right.
It's like
right.
I used 2 and I could do others, but like but to that end, we know exactly where those 2 tail feathers came from because they're both from Fox.
Exactly.
So it's like if you're making them, you would need a constant supply, and like phoenixes are not easy to tame.
No.
Like at all. So like how are you getting such ready supply to phoenix tail feathers outside of the 2 that were gifted to you 50 years ago? It's like maybe it's the guy selling Floo Powder 3 shops down that won't answer the door. Because you just harvest the tail feathers, they burn, they collect the ashes. Fantastic.
Boom.
Boom, bam. There you go. That's how Floo Powder works. Don't let anyone else tell you otherwise.
No, I love it. It
Bam.
totally makes sense to me. Yep. I'm all for it. But anyway, then you get like another, in addition to this, you kind of get like another like glimpse and kind of understanding into, well, it's interesting because I think the economic system within the wizarding world is just so very different.
Yes.
Where like the Weasleys are definitely regarded, as like being stretched thin financially speaking.
Yeah.
But like they also don't seem to like food seems to be perfectly aplenty.
Right.
So it's like there are certain demands financially on them that I think like I think it kind of gets like very wholesome into their nature, which is that like they're just not status driven people.
Right.
And therefore like it could be like one of these things where it's like maybe like there's like the Malfoys would and we even see it in this very chapter, like take pity on the Weasleys for being so like, poor or whatever. But it's like only poor in the way that you perceive.
Right. Poor.
Yeah,
right.
it's like,
because like, I mean, yeah, it's like you're right. Food doesn't seem to be like a concern, which I think falls under like Gamp's law of transfiguration, fast forward to Deathly Hallows or whatever. Like if you have some, you can make more of it. So it's sort of like, yep.
Yeah.
Plus, they have a
exactly.
garden, so whatever they're growing, they can just
Have
whatever they harvest, they can multiply.
Right. If you
basically
can grow
endlessly.
a tomato, we can have all tomatoes.
All tomatoes
Yeah.
all the time, and you have to imagine like they probably don't have like a mortgage or whatever. It seems like
True.
wizards can just construct their houses.
Right.
You know, I don't feel like they bought the burrow. They just built it.
Right. Yep.
That's my understanding of it. Anyway, but yeah, like wizard economics is so weird because you're right. Like so many of the things you would traditionally think of as like needing to spend money on, they can just do with magic.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Precisely.
Yep.
But either which way, you do still feel for them in this chapter a little bit because they're, of course, running low on the Floo Powder, and they're sort of like already just coming on the heels of being like 5 sets of Lockhart books, and Ginny needs robes and a wand and everything. It's like, whew, okay, it's gonna be a big day.
To me, it feels like Fred and George can probably share, and that like probably they're not going to read them anyway.
That was exactly my thoughts. I was like, Fred and George are gonna see through Lockhart in no time flat.
Right.
Because I think that's it. Probably, it's like I keep saying this, and it's kind of blowing my mind a little bit, but like I feel like Fred and George as characters stand out to me in such a huge way in this like very careful dissection that we're doing here on the podcast.
Yeah.
Where it's just like I'm like sort of just so like on board and supportive of everything that they do.
Yeah.
But like to me, it's the type of thing like where Fred and George will care as much in class as is needed to help them accomplish their own goals.
Yeah.
But like, which might sound sort of like, well, that's not going to make the world's greatest student. But it also, I feel like would make it very clear to me that like that's why they would see through Lockhart so quickly. It's like, there's nothing we can get from you.
Right,
You don't have anything to offer us.
Showmanship, Ben.
Yes, yeah. It's
Showmanship.
Yeah. But they also have they have their own flair for showmanship. So they
That's
also
true.
they see it for what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. I wonder if there is something that like they take away from Lockhart, like in that capacity. It's like, are you like actually like it's like when it's the example. I think I brought it up last week where Hermione they're doing their demonstration with the skiving snack boxes, and Hermione is like, oh, that's not useful, and Ron's like, they've made 26 galleons already. You know,
Right,
it's like,
right.
I mean, it's useful, sort of. You know,
The money's
they're not
flowing.
accomplishing anything, but they are getting money, and it's like that's a lot of what Lockhart's doing. I mean, they are definitely more talented wizards than Lockhart by
absolutely,
leaps
yeah.
and bounds. But like, there is certainly something to like the hey. A good showman can make money as much as anyone else, you know.
Right.
You know,
And
there's some value here.
plus, to your earlier point from that chapter art with like his clashing attire, I'm pretty sure that when we hear about the outfits that Fred and George are wearing when they go into Weasley's Wizard Weeks,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're clashing.
Oh, okay.
They're like kind of like so over the top in like a completely different way.
Right.
But either way, so
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Let's see. So then Harry has to go do the Floo Powder for the first time, and I feel like they do not give him enough instructions. I feel like they're just like, there's so many fireplaces to choose from, and it's like, wait, what? What do you mean? I could, huh?
I know. No, yeah. I was trying to think of what a good example for something like this would be in everyday life. And the only thing I could think of is sort of like the way that each individual person has their own like computer set up and like where, like which direction the mouse wheel scrolls.
Oh,
or
yeah.
like the speed of the cursor or, like the way that like folders are aligned, or if you have like all of your icons hidden or something like that. Like, you know, it's one of those things where you're so used to the way that like you interact with something that you have such your like your own personal imprint like laid upon. But then like if you try and go and use somebody else's computer, it's like you know how to use a computer perfectly well. You do it every single day. If you go and try and use someone else's with the upside down scroll wheel, it's like, what am I even doing over here? You know, like I am so lost. So it's like I can't even think of the types of things I would try to instruct somebody if they were attempting to like use all of my weird little quirks and configurations.
Yeah.
So maybe that's like this, where it's not that hard. Just go and like point the cursor at the thing and click. And
Yeah,
it's like,
you got it.
yeah, but it goes the wrong way.
Right, I clicked on something. What? Yeah, but there's like 1,000 things you clicked on.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It could be something like that. Anyway, Harry goes in there and he doesn't speak clearly enough. He gets like one great over and ends up in Borgin and Burkes in Nocturne Alley, which is sort of like interesting to me that if you were trying to go to Nocturne Alley and you said Nocturne Alley, would you show up in the shop?
That's a good question too. Yeah, this is like kind of like one of those where like the movie does like the whole like diagonally, thing, which I feel like was mostly just for people who hadn't realized yet that Diagon Alley is diagonally.
Yes, diagonally, and
yeah.
Nocturne Alley is nocturnally.
Yes, indeed. It's wordplay, people.
Got it?
It's so fun. But to me, I think what's happening is that I think they even explain like he must have like mispronounced it like because he coughed because of the hot ash in his mouth or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think what's really happening here is just simply that like you're supposed to like look for the right fireplace and then like he misses it by like one.
Yeah.
But I would be curious to know like even in Diagon Alley if there's just like a fireplace that just like is open to like the center.
Oh, to like the center of the street?
Right. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Because it also seems like if you were to like arrive there at the same time as somebody else, like would you just like fall on top of them?
I know,
something?
right?
Like,
I'm also kind of surprised that like, you know, because he does show up just in the middle of the shop, like just appears out of their fireplace, like that it's not like that no one notices that like is it Mr. Borgin who's there? You know, he doesn't like notice Harry like arrive in the fireplace.
oh, true.
You know, he
true,
just
true,
sort of
true.
like pops into the shop. And he's
Right.
just sort of like, yeah, okay, whatever. But in any case, Harry shows up in Borgin and Burkes in Nocturne Alley, where this is such a fun little bit here where the Malfoys come in and he's hiding from them. There's evil-looking masks staring down from the walls, which are almost certainly like the Death Eater masks, right?
I wrote the exact same thing. I was like, I had not caught this in the past.
Me
I was like,
neither.
are they Death Eater masks?
I mean, probably.
Probably.
Based on the rest of the stuff in here.
Well, I mean, there's so much stuff. I mean, you got the hand on the withered, a withered hand on a cushion, which is the hand of glory, which
Yep.
we know Malfoy eventually does end up getting.
Yep.
There's the evil-looking masks, and then we also, of course, have the cabinet that Harry crawls into. That
Oh my gosh, I
is
know.
like one of the vanishing cabinets, and the opal necklace that says it's like claimed the lives of like 15 Muggles.
Right. So there's that.
19 Muggles.
Yes, so the opal necklace shows up again in book 6 when Malfoy's trying to kill Dumbledore. This is one of he buys this necklace that we read about in this chapter.
Yes.
And it's the one that Katie Bell touches with just like a little like bit of her finger, and she like floats up in the air and is almost killed herself.
Right.
And then the vanishing cabinet. It's almost somewhat, there's like a line that says, Harry looked quickly around and spotted a large black cabinet to his left. He shot inside it and pulled the doors closed, leaving a small crack to peer through, which is like kind of funny because like if he'd shut the cabinet the whole way, would he have ended up at Hogwarts?
Oh, that would have been so weird.
Because at this point, Peeves hasn't broken the other one.
Yeah,
right?
True. Yeah.
So like,
I guess we don't know if there's like an attached like incantation or any type of like intention needed.
Yeah.
But that's a good point. Like, like, is it possible that if he doesn't leave that crack, that Harry ends up
just at Hogwarts?
At
like,
Hogwarts.
what just happened?
That would have been so wild.
That would have been pretty wild because that is the same cabinet that they eventually used to break in. And then Draco buys the necklace. He buys the Hand of Glory at some point. Even this is sort of interesting. There's Lucius is there selling poisons from his house to Mr. Borgin. Like, that's what he's there to do.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
And Draco, I'm wondering, like, does Draco buy the poisons back to put in the mead that he tries to sell Dumbledore?
Wow, the ones that ends up poisoning Ron.
Right.
Whoa. I
right.
bet so. Yes.
I know. So it's like, I feel like Draco was like given the task to kill Dumbledore, and he was like, whew, okay. I'm going to Borgin and Burkes. I'm going to see what kind of tools I can get here. And he like buys the necklace, buys the poison, buys the hand. Like,
I know, like number one new customer.
I know, number one, and then uses the cabinet in the shop.
It's all book 6 stuff, too.
It's all book 6. And I guess he could have even identified the cabinet because it's in book 5 that Montague gets stuck in the cabinet.
Yeah.
So, it's all book 6 stuff. Like, Malfoy, like, just spots a bunch of stuff on this particular visit that he eventually comes back and gets all of it and, like, uses a bunch of it to try and kill Dumbledore pretty unsuccessfully. Except I guess he gets the Death Eaters in with the cabinet, so there's that.
Yes,
but
yes, indeed.
Yeah, so that was just it's such a fun chapter in that regard. Yeah,
no, it's super well. I know I kept highlighting stuff and I was like, oh, this shows up later. This shows up later.
Yeah.
Super interesting. I love the thing about the poison though. That's a good catch.
Right.
So then the next thing we get to see though is sort of the relationship between Draco and Lucius. And Lucius we're meeting for the very first time ever.
Yes, we are.
The thing that I found to be kind of interesting about this is that forever and ever, I've always sort of said that, like, I feel like Draco is almost just the exact, like, equivalent of Dudley in the wizarding world. Like, he's just been grown up, like, being told he's, like, the most special thing ever. And,
right.
like, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like this chapter, at the very least, kind of gives you, like, a slightly different perspective. Like, I feel like Lucius is harder on Draco in a way that the Dursleys are never hard on Dudley.
Yeah.
Like, there's a bit more expectation being set. There's a bit more, like, protocol and manners and that type of thing.
Right.
Of being, like, not from a good place from Lucius's perspective.
No.
I'm not giving him a Father of the Year award.
Certainly not.
But he does have a bit more intensity than we ever see from the Dursleys towards Dudley.
Right. So then it's interesting, though, that why they are there, Malfoy says that, as you've heard, the Ministry is conducting more raids, said Mr. Malfoy. And he's like, I have a few items at home that might embarrass me if the Ministry were to call. And he's there selling poisons, but it's like Mr. Weasley was doing raids, presumably for Muggle artifacts. So it's like, does Lucius have, like, a bunch of, like, misused Muggle items at his house?
That's
that
an
they would be,
question
you know,
too.
like
Yeah.
that they'd be raiding for.
Unless the entire Ministry is performing raids in each of their respective departments.
I suppose that's true.
Which always seems possible. But he also does name Arthur Weasley in this exact exchange.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so it does seem possible. I suppose, like, and it specifically says there are rumors about a new Muggle Protection Act. No doubt that flea-bitten, Muggle-loving fool Arthur Weasley, such a mean person, talking about my boy Arthur. Like
oh man. Let's see. It's also, I think later on, maybe we'll come up with this later when they talk about the raid. Yeah, when they use the Polyjuice Potion later in the book, they'll learn, like, Draco tells them that those, like, they don't know about, like, the secret basement or whatever or something.
Yes.
Which I think is later what they use as, like, the prison, or as like the dungeon for like Ollivander and Luna and Dean Thomas and stuff in Deathly Hallows.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Which seems like its own sort of like magical stronghold, kind of like Hogwarts. Like you
Right.
can't apparate in and out of it.
Exactly.
All sorts of stuff.
Unless you're a house elf.
Unless you're a house elf.
Right.
Of course, sir. I'm an elf.
I'm an elf.
That's one of my favorite moments.
That's right. Let's see. I think there is, speaking of like Malfoy's like expectations, there's like, he's yelling at Mr. Borgin for like trying to say like my son will amount to more than a thief, and it says like, though if his grades don't pick up, and Malfoy tries to like blame Hermione, and like Lucius sort of calls him out on it, and he's like, no, it's not her fault, it's your fault.
Yes, I know. That's a thing where it's like. And it's interesting to me as well, because, I mean, this is, again, I mean, if you compare it to Dudley, like, it seems like the Dursleys can't see Dudley's faults.
Right.
And so on some level, this could be like the opposite end of the spectrum, where it's like, sometimes people who grow up with parents who are too demanding, it can cause its own, sort of like struggles and stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing that kind of surprises me is that like the more we get to know Draco as a student, he seems to be a pretty high achieving student.
Right.
Like he gets like an outstanding in potions at the very least, and he's able to take the NEWT level eventually. He's able to learn legilimency.
Yeah.
Or occlumency, I guess.
In some ways, he sort of like does have a point. He's like, it's not my fault that, it's like, it's not my fault, Hermione Granger's so good at school or whatever. And it's like, he's not entirely wrong. It's like, for all we know, Draco is like second in the class.
Oh, sure.
It's just like, if not for freaking Hermione Granger coming in being like the smartest witch of 10 generations here, I would be doing just fine, Dad.
Right. Yeah, like that would even be interesting if that's the interpretation of this scene, because especially if Draco is getting like straight A's,
right,
when he's not the top student,
right?
Like that would be such a situation where like Draco would have absolutely a point,
because he does even classify it as favorites, like It's not like that he had the bad grades. It's just that the teachers have their favorites,
Ah, yes.
It's like,
yes.
yeah, I got the same grades. They just like her more or something.
Right.
Yeah.
It'd be so frustrating.
Oh, man. I love the headcanon that Draco was like second in the class.
I know, that's sort of
That's
fun.
kind of interesting.
It's pretty cool because, I think no matter what, Harry can still oust him at Defense Against the Dark Arts because Harry also ousts Hermione at Defense Against the Dark Arts. So maybe not in that particular subject, but it also means though that it's not just Harry who is outshining Malfoy by being like one of the most popular kids at school and like the Quidditch star.
Yeah.
Hermione is also outshining him by being the most academically like gifted.
Yeah.
So it could also feed into like why Draco hates her so much, because it's like
That
it's
could
not
be.
just being Muggle-born, like from his perspective. It's like, you are making me look bad.
Yeah.
Like, because I would be killing it if not for you.
Yes, so that's an interesting thought. So there's another interesting line here from Malfoy where he says, I'm in something of a hurry, Borgin. I have important business elsewhere today. So I just highlighted that one because it's like, is that a reference to the diary? Is that what he's talking about, do you think? Like, I have important business elsewhere? Like,
okay, I have a lot of thoughts on this because I highlighted it too.
Yeah.
And so I do, yes. I think he does. The important business that he is talking about, I think, is the planting of the diary.
Right.
The big question is whether or not he is specifically targeting the Weasleys.
yes.
Because
Or if he was maybe trying to target Harry.
Or if he's trying to target Harry. But the big thing would be that they make their plans to go to Diagon Alley on this specific day based on the letter
From Hermione.
Which says we're going to go to London next Wednesday to buy my new books. So this makes me wonder whether or not like Dobby was able to overcome like his programming to go and warn Harry, but he probably can't overcome the direct order to spy on when the Weasleys would be there.
Oh, well, this is pretty, I mean, that's pretty interesting. And also we know that Dobby was intercepting letters.
We also know that Dobby was intercepting letters.
So the letters to Harry. So
who does the letter go to from Hermione?
I think it goes to Ron because she's asking like, how is Harry?
Yes.
Right. So could Dobby have just been could Dobby have intercepted the letter and gotten the information and like been forced to give it to Lucius?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh man.
So I think the fact that the Malfoys are here on the same day is no mistake.
No mistake.
Yeah.
Because they're even sort of arriving this is them arriving in town.
In town,
And it's
yeah.
at the same time.
Same time.
Even the timing is pretty. The only other thing that could possibly facilitate the timing is the Lockhart book signing. Like it could be well-known information that Lockhart will be there.
Yes.
And so he could like maybe like guess this is when lots of people will be there, or like make this is like my best odds for Hogwarts students to be here because this famous author will be at Flourish and Blotts. But it seems more likely that there was some foul play.
I think foul play.
Yeah.
Yeah. It fits with Lucius too.
Fits him a little bit more than to have been tracking the Lockhart.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. Then basically we have sort of like Lucius's departure from the store, where he basically is like kind of using his power to force Mr. Borgin's hands. And I do like this particular line because basically he's been referring to him as like Master Malfoy the whole time. And upon Lucius leaving the store, Borgin says, good day yourself, Mr. Malfoy, as if the stories are true. You haven't sold me. And if half the stories are well, I'm butchering it. I'm sorry. Good day yourself, Mr. Malfoy. And if the stories are true, you haven't sold me half of what's hidden in your manor. Mm-hmm. The use of Mr. Like as sort of like, because it's even italicized in our copy of the book.
Right,
like,
it is.
It's like he's absolutely emphasizing like when you're here, you're master. When you leave, Mister.
Well, does it say? I mean, it's looking at the other places. He says like Mr. Malfoy. What a pleasure to see you again.
Oh, okay. Maybe I think he refers to.
He's Draco as young Master Malfoy.
Young Master Malfoy.
Yeah,
that's it.
It is different in which that it is spelled out the word Mister versus the other times when he's talking, it's the abbreviation MR. So I'm not sure why there'd be like a difference, or if that's like could that be like a British thing where Mister means master or something?
I don't know.
Or yeah, like there is a slightly different spelling. Or you were listening to the audio. Does he say master?
No, he says
No?
Miss. Or he on the. That's like a good. That's a good question.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I don't know. But either way, he's definitely as soon as Malfoy is out of sight, he's like shifting tones.
Yes, absolutely. But the thing that I always find interesting about that is like Borgin is like not a good dude himself.
Yeah.
But like it's sort of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend situation.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like sort of like a good little moment there.
Yeah.
It's like,
yes. Right, totally. So Harry gets out of the shop, and then I think there's like a little interesting thing here where it says the one he just left, Borgin and Burkes, looked like the largest, but opposite was a nasty window display of shrunken heads, and 2 doors down, a large cage was alive with gigantic black spiders, which is like, we know that gigantic black spiders are going to be a big part of this book later on. So it's like, is this shop selling acromantulas?
I know.
Do you think? Like, is that possible? Which then makes me think back to like the actual first opening of the Chamber of Secrets, where like that Tom Riddle frames Hagrid for having an acromantula at the school.
Yeah.
And we know that I don't know I guess Tom Riddle graduates and goes to work for Borgin and Burkes. So it's not like he was working there and was like, oh, maybe this is where he bought the acromantula from to give to Hagrid or something.
Oh, because isn't it the case that like he supposedly came in like the pocket of a traveler?
Oh, something like that. Yeah, you're right. Right.
Because I think a lot of people theorize that like Newt was the one who brought the acromantula back.
Okay, so there could be that. Maybe, yeah, okay. I was trying to get into a zone where this is where Tom bought an acromantula to give to Hagrid to frame him or whatever.
That would be pretty wild.
But on that same note, Hagrid shows up like 1 second later, and he's like, flesh it and slug repellent or whatever. And it's like, or maybe you were there looking at spiders.
Yeah, yes, indeed. It is like one of those things too, yeah, where I'm like I understand that like that Nocturne Alley is sort of like a dodgy place overall, but it feels like other places would sell flesh-eating slug repellent.
It does. I feel like this is maybe one of those things where it's like, because Hagrid is going to be like framed later on, as the one opening the chamber. It's like, and he was in Nocturne Alley earlier.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, sort of like a little bit of a misdirect. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like one of those where like I can never go back and like I don't have the ability to go back and read it for the first time, so I just know that Hagrid is completely innocent.
Right.
So I can't like. There's no part of me that can even like read that sentence and think like nefarious thoughts.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like that's probably like the original setup is like, oh,
Right.
why was he there? That's right.
I was looking for flesh-eating slug repellent, growled Hagrid. They're ruining the school cabbages. Which, to me, it's like, does Hogwarts grow its own food? Like, I don't know. Do you think they grow their own food? They must. They have school cabbages.
They must.
Yeah,
must be.
But it's also like, why do you have to grow that much food if you can just replicate it all the time, right?
These are the questions.
Also, how much cabbages do they think they need?
Seriously, who even likes cabbage?
What kind of high schoolers are just like, oh man, they're out of cabbage? Bummer.
Darn it, because I have to eat these drumsticks and delicious desserts instead.
I know. Who is opting for the cabbage?
The cabbage.
Anyway, moving on.
Hagrid does ask, how come you never wrote back to me? And Harry explains about like Dobby. And then you get a line interrupted by Hagrid. He says, lousy muggles, if I'd have known. And then Hermione interrupts and says, Harry, over here.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to know what Hagrid would have done if he had known. Like, shown up on Sirius's motorbike, shown up and knocked down the door again, like brought in Dumbledore.
I also think Hagrid just completely glosses over Dobby. It's like Harry explained all about Dobby and the Dursleys, and he's like, dumb muggles. It's like, well, what about that house elf, though?
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
aren't you concerned about that at all?
That was interesting, wasn't it?
Right?
Just now?
That was unusual, yes?
There's not supposed to be a house elf at Privet Drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope, never mind. Anyway,
doesn't
Hermione shows up, saves Hagrid, saved by the bell, as usual.
She actually plays Belle.
Oh, you're
Emma
right.
Watson.
You're right.
What a good joke.
Oh man, totally didn't mean to do that, but whatever. Let's see. Oh, just a tiny little thing they do here where in the movies when Harry shows up at Diagon Alley, Hermione immediately fixes his glasses as sort of like a throwback to the first movie where she does it on the train.
Yep. That
That does not happen in the book. It is instead Mr. Weasley who does it and returns them good as new.
Yes.
So there's that. Just a little quick correction there, movies.
Yes, indeed. Which because it is always again one of those things where it's like you're not supposed to be able to do magic outside of school.
Exactly. And there's Hermione just doing it in Wizard Public.
Right. Exactly. Especially Hermione, who is like, she's like
Yeah, Miss Rule follower.
right for the most
Right.
part.
Although, this is also one of those things where it feels like if anywhere you could just get away with doing magic, like this would be it.
It definitely feels
Yeah.
like everybody would be so excited to go to go shopping, back to
Yeah.
school shopping, because like I need to perform some magic.
But it's like the trace here would be worthless.
Yeah, there's no
Everywhere, it's all wizards everywhere.
all
you
the
know?
time. Yeah, magic happening in every corner.
Yeah. So even if they notice you doing it, doesn't matter.
Exactly.
They can't prove it's you.
Right.
Yep.
So then we go down to Gringotts, where you get like just the really devastating, small pile of sickles and just one gold galleon for the Weasleys, which like based on the typical conversion rates, which I've gone back before and like kind of like reconfigured myself based on like the like value of gold. But I think approximately the entire like family wealth, at least that's being stored in the vault, is approximately like $25.
Wow.
It's like it's like for the amount of stuff that they're supposedly buying on this day, and as much as we know, like I think Harry's wand costs 7 galleons.
Right. Yeah.
Ginny needs a wand.
Ginny needs a wand.
So it's like hopefully they just have they just keep more of them.
Hopefully there's just more on hand that you just don't know about. Yeah. But then I also, it's like, I think you already said this earlier. It's like, it's like they don't have a lot of like gold money, but they are certainly like rich where it counts.
Exactly.
Versus like, they're the exact opposite of, the Malfoys, very on purpose, where they have tons of money, but are terrible people.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Then you have Harry, who has a lot of money and is a great person. So yay.
Yay.
Let's see. Then there's Percy being shady again, Sam muttering vaguely about needing a new quill. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, okay, whatever. Just going to skulk off there so we can suspect you of opening the chamber later. No big deal. Then let's see, they go down to Harry wants to go spend some money, so he buys 3 large strawberry and peanut butter ice creams, which I just highlighted because one, if you actually go to Universal and you go to the Harry Potter Land section of the park, you can go to Florian Fortescue's, and that is the order you should get. It is such good ice cream.
Ugh.
Like, do get this order. That's what you want at the shop. That's all.
Okay.
Moving on.
I think it's a great thing to dial in on, because strawberry and peanut butter ice cream. I know we've had this trivia question before, and I was just like guffawed to discover what the answer to it was, and it's like it is such an unusual flavor of ice cream.
I know.
Like,
it doesn't seem like it should be because it's just PB&J.
Exactly. Yeah. But like, I don't even think in England. I mean, we had our buddy Seamus come once upon a time, and he had never had a peanut butter and jelly before.
Not only had he never had it, he had like the very thought of it seemed like gross to him.
He thought that our jelly was like Jello, like gelatin.
Yes.
Jello.
Yeah.
Not like spreadable.
Not like spreadable. Yes, like what you would think of as like Welch's grape jelly or something.
Yes, exactly.
But like even when we made him the sandwich, he was like pretty hesitant to take a bite. Like, this is about to be really weird. And it's like, dude, Seamus, this has got to be the most common sandwich in America that 5-year-olds eat at lunch every day.
Every day.
Like,
yeah. And then
how could you have never heard of it?
But then he loved it.
But then he loved it,
Yeah,
yeah. So we got it. Shout out to Seamus. Go check out his YouTube channel as well. He does lots of Pixar fun Disney stuff.
Yes, indeed.
Anyway, also they mentioned Gamble and Jape's Wizarding Joke Shop. I just highlighted that and I was like, I've read this book so many times. I could not have told you that was a place that existed.
Nope.
Yep. I was like, they talk about Zonkos all the time, and I'm always like, I couldn't have told you there was also a different joke shop at Diagon Alley.
No, absolutely not. This could have been given to me on like a multiple choice before, and it'd be like Gamble and Japes, and I'd be like, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So I underlined it as well, and I was like, I should probably try to like store this away, because it feels like the type of thing that like a year from now we will be asked this question, and I won't know the answer to it.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Then we run into Percy again, reading his book, Prefects Who Gained Power.
Yeah, it's like, very on the nose. Like
I know.
The misdirection that is being like applied to Percy in particular in this chapter is being laid on thick.
Yeah.
Like, you are absolutely, as the story unfolds, you would have every reason in the world to think that Percy is supposed to be suspicious.
I know. It is so interesting to me how thick it is being laid on here, because like I remember reading this as a kid. I remember like hearing as an adult that like Percy is supposed to be like a red herring, and I was like, what? No, why? When? How? I never thought Percy was opening. What? What are you talking about?
It's like, I think like me as a reader dislikes Percy so much for the most part that I'm usually just sort of like, it would never be him.
Yeah.
Like,
I can't give him that much credit.
No, exactly. It's like Draco, you can at least be like, all right, well, now that guy, he's going for stuff.
Right.
Percy is just like, it just doesn't feel like the type. So never really had that potential belief. So I don't think I was properly thrown by Percy, which that could be like its own thing, where it's like the most ineffective red herring of all time and we are not even seeing the end of it at all. Like, there's so much more where like Percy shows up like in weird places throughout the rest of this book, and it's just going to be like, nope.
Right?
Yep, not it.
Yep. I think it's kind of funny too that like it actually is Ginny, and like both Ginny and Percy are behaving unusual for Weasleys at the moment, and it is actually like both for the same reason. It's like Percy's acting weird, and we know the reason is because he's like going out with Penelope Clearwater, and he's like embarrassed by it or whatever. And like Ginny's reason is because like they say like she usually never shuts up, but it's like she's being super quiet, and it's because she has a crush on Harry. And it's like, they both are sort of acting differently for the same reason.
Right, that's true. Yeah. That's true. So maybe this is just how the Weasleys be when enamored.
Exactly. So then there's now we finally get to Gilderoy Lockhart at Flourish and Blotts, and there's the sign that says, this is a trivia question, by the way, is what hours he'll be there. I hate when that trivia question comes up. It's 12:30 to 4:30. Remember it right now.
Yes.
It says he'll be signing copies of his autobiography, Magical Me. And I just highlighted that. I was like, it's funny to me that he has an autobiography called Magical Me, because like isn't every single one of his books autobiographical? Supposedly to the public.
Right.
So is Magical Me just a collection of like all of them? You'd think you'd have to cover all of the stuff you did in the other books.
It does feel that way. Unless in this book he's just like, if you check out my copy of
Year with the Yeti.
Year with the Yeti, exactly.
Right. But that title alone suggests there was an entire year of his life spent with the Yeti, which feels like you would include that in your autobiography.
Yes, it would seem like you would almost need to.
It would have to.
Yeah.
Formative year.
I know.
I mean, he's not that old.
No. It's like,
a full year.
You got to include some mention of it. That's a good point.
Yeah. Anyway, and more trivia on the next page is that if you can keep track of what color robes Lockhart is wearing throughout the different events, that will answer you a lot of trivia questions, I can tell you.
Yes.
He's wearing Forget-Me-Not Blue at Flourish and Blotts.
That exactly matched his eyes.
Exactly matched his eyes. He has Forget-Me-Not eyes. Maybe that's a good way to remember it, actually.
Oh, that is, yeah. Forget-Me-Not eyes.
Anyway,
I
they
like
match
that.
his eyes. Let's see. Then, of course, he walks in. He spots Harry, pulls him into the camera. He says, together, you and I are worth the front page, which, of course, Harry would just be worth the front page by himself, so he doesn't even need Lockhart.
That would have been so funny if Harry was like, please.
I have the chosen one. Please. that would have been hilarious. Yes. Oh man, if Harry just like leaned into it. It'd be great if like he took the exact wrong lesson and was just like, oh, this guy thinks he's famous. That's it.
No, I'm famous.
Hold my potion.
Hold my potion. That's so good.
Oh man, let's see. But so Lockhart gives him the books, which Harry just generously gives to the Weasleys, or gives to Ginny anyway. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and what has got to be like the world's biggest cauldron.
I know. Well, I think it's got to be like part of me. I was wondering about the cauldron too, because like Ginny is like what 11 here, and this cauldron is loaded with books. Like is this some sort of like magical cauldron that like expand has an expanding charm, like Hermione's bag or something?
Yeah, it could be.
Like maybe I don't know.
Yeah. Because it seems like Harry is like weighed down by the sheer weight of all of these books.
Yeah,
and then there's Ginny just hanging on to it.
Oh, I know. Well, it's sort of like whenever I remember as a kid thinking whenever they were making like potions and cauldrons, like you see in the movie and they have these little like tabletop cauldrons, which seems like it makes more sense. But like to me as a kid, like whenever I heard of a witch in a cauldron, it was a cauldron the size of, that like sat on the floor and came up past your waist and was massive,
Yes.
A cauldron.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I mean, you know what I mean? A cauldron.
A cauldron, Yeah. Ginny's carrying this thing around. Massive. Yeah. Obviously not. It's more of a small cauldron, which, that's not as much fun if you ask me. I want big cauldrons. No. Yeah. But then we have Ginny's first line in front of Harry this book, which is to Malfoy, and it's sort of that gleam of Ginny's like fiery attitude where she says like, leave him alone. He didn't want all that. And it's like, oh, that you're like standing up for Harry with your first words. That's kind of fun.
It is pretty cool. And it's neat too, because like otherwise Ginny's character, it's like, it's so hard to imagine her going from this like very shy person to being as like bold and like sort of center of attention as she eventually will end up being. And so you're exactly right. It's like you're starting to see like that glimmer of like that's what's really hiding underneath that surface there.
Yeah,
it's like a pretty strong person.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And then I love Malfoy's response as, Potter, you've got yourself a girlfriend. And it's like, in this book especially, it's like the idea of having a girlfriend is like so embarrassing to everyone. It is like, that's what he's insulting him with here, is that like, you have a girlfriend.
I know. I was trying to like contextualize that in my head and like go into like a real world situation. Like, wow, Ben, you have a girlfriend. It's like, cool.
Yeah,
like,
you like girls, haha.
Yeah, it's like,
basically.
I know.
Yeah,
you're right though. Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. But then I also just highlighted, and it's like, well, actually, yes, though, eventually. So they do date.
He's pretty dead on the
you are on the money here. But then Ron has this weird line where he just says, "Bet you're surprised to see Harry here, eh?" He's like, "What? Why?"
I was trying to unpack that too. Do you think that's from like because Dobby came and tried to get Harry to not go, and they don't know that Dobby's there for like protective reasons, and so like they think it's a practical joke, and so it's
like this is Ron like having settled in his brain that that's what I thought too. Like this goes back to the conversation they had in the flying car where they're like, do you know anyone who hates you? And this would be like their idea of a practical joke, and they're like Malfoy, and it's like Ron seems to have settled on that, I guess. Yeah. Now like he's bringing it up as if this is like obvious information to Draco, like, oh, we know what you did with Dobby. They don't even know that Dobby works for the Malfoys yet.
It's like we almost need a line from Draco where he's just like what?
What?
Like,
excuse me?
Why would I not think Harry would be here?
Bet you're surprised to see Harry here, huh?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's the moment right there where it's like sometimes like in real life, I feel like you would have like more situation unfolding where the person would be like, I don't actually know what you mean. Can
Yeah,
you
wait.
explain? Can you
Hold on.
elaborate?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, but in Ron's mind, it's like, we're on to you. We know you tried to get Harry not to come back to Hogwarts, so I bet you're surprised to see him here. Ha ha.
Yes.
Like, for Ron, this is a real gotcha moment.
It is.
And Draco's like, okay.
Draco says nothing.
I guess you said that. Moving on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Oh, but actually, he sort of responds as not as surprised as I am to see you in a shop, Weasley. So
Oh.
he's sort of, I guess maybe he does sort of be like, yeah, I am surprised to see, but not. It just sort of turns it into an insult about Ron being poor.
Yeah.
As ever. Let's see.
Moving on to the next page, though, we definitely get like another one of these moments where it's Arthur versus Lucius.
Yes.
Really. Which even this is kind of like one of those things where it's like, is Lucius attempting to bait Mr. Weasley into this particular like fight,
Yeah.
specifically to bring about the opportunity to plant the diary?
Right.
Like, is he doing it on purpose here?
Like we know at the very least. Well, based on what he says to Borgin that he has other business, if we assume that he means planting the diary, then at the very least he means to plant it on someone that day. And I would say it's more likely that he knows the Weasleys and Harry and Hermione will be there. So he is trying to plant it on one of them. And it almost seems like he would be trying to plant it on Harry. Like, do you think his intended target is Ginny, or just like do you think he has to settle for Ginny, or like, I don't know.
I don't think he's really targeting Harry.
No? Okay.
I don't think so. Because, I mean, like, because he's just trying to open the Chamber of Secrets, right?
Right.
Like, we oftentimes contextualize for like our what if theories and stuff like that like the diary is planted to weaponize as a way for Voldemort to get to Harry from inside of the school where Harry is otherwise protected. But that's not really what Lucius is up to in real life. Like, he's just trying to open the Chamber of Secrets. He doesn't even know.
Oh, he doesn't even know.
Like exactly what it'll do, or that it's a Horcrux. Like, he doesn't know hardly anything about the diary at all, other than it has this one power.
Right.
So I think
That
he's
it'll
just trying
open
to get it into school. And I think that he's probably trying to disgrace Arthur.
That's true.
So-
Maybe he is targeting the Weasley family a little more, because he does pick. I mean, he picks up Ginny's books.
He picks up Ginny's books.
And it's like-
and he
but-
even says, "Here, girl, take your book." So
Yeah, and like that's when he does it right there. Here, girl, take your book. It's the best your father can give you. So it's like that is when he does it. But like in the meantime, she has like dropped her cauldron and stuff. So it's like, I guess he picks it up. She drops the cauldron. The books go everywhere, and then he gives it back to her. And that is when we assume he gives her the diary
that's supposed to be
as
the
well.
moment. Yeah.
So it seems like you're right that because he could have picked up anyone's books. And he like specifically picks up the one Ginny's holding. He's like, you must walk in, decide she's the one. Let's go.
Yes. And I think that's exactly it. And I mean, it goes back to exactly even the same reason that he's in Nocturne Alley in the first place, is because Arthur Weasley is supposedly injecting these new laws that are causing all of these new raids, which
Right.
is causing him. So like a lot of the diary planting doesn't have anything to do with the return of Lord Voldemort. Like, as far as,
No, I don't think so.
Lucius at this point in time is just trying to like live his best outside of his responsibilities as a Death Eater. So if anything, like when he appears to Voldemort has every reason to be like, Lucius, what the heck, man?
I know.
Like, where you been?
Where you been? You should have been looking for me. Also, how's that diary? What?
You definitely protected the diary, right?
I was like, well.
Turns out the Potter kid destroyed it. What?
Can you imagine having to give him that news?
I'm pretty sure he would kill you.
Yeah, but he must not have.
He must
right?
not have,
Yeah,
yeah,
he doesn't
yeah.
figure it out. We have a whole video about how Lucius is just the worst Death Eater.
He is
And by
so-
when I say worst, I mean the least effective Death Eater.
Yes, he has no competence rating whatsoever.
Yeah, like he gets nothing done.
Yeah.
Almost at all. Gets one of the Horcruxes destroyed. Of course, that's another one of those things where it's like, if Voldemort had trusted Lucius enough to tell him that it was a piece of his soul, like certainly it would have just remained protected. He wouldn't have been so cavalier about it. But of course, he can't do that, and that's to his own demise. But it always comes out. It's always a big circle like that. He's always setting himself up for failure.
It's true. All
Yeah.
the time and always.
I do think it's almost surprising here that Mr. Weasley like physically attacks Lucius. Like it feels out of character.
It does feel out of character, and that's what I was saying too. Is like I think like we actually get a really good line from Arthur, and I love it, and I love it in the movies as well. But like I think that if you were watching this entire scene unfold from Lucius's perspective, Lucius I think gets the better hand of this entire exchange because he's successful in his mission. I think that he is baiting Arthur in the first place, which he's successful at doing.
Yeah.
And he basically does that by saying, "Dear me, what's the use of being disgraced the name of wizard if they don't even pay you well for it?" And Mr. Weasley comes back with we have a very different idea of what disgraces the name of wizard, Malfoy. And I love that response because I think like we would all agree with Arthur in this particular occasion that like the Weasleys are a much better representation of what it means to be a wizard. But I almost think that like Lucius is like baiting him. Like he is intentionally trying to get him to strike.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yep.
So yeah, I do think overall in the end, it's like you love to see like Arthur stand up for himself. You love to see him like be as quick-witted. You know he's just as good of a wizard, if not a lot better.
Yeah.
Like in terms of like magical prowess and ability and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that the physical attack does feel. I guess it feels odd or out of place.
It does. I suppose it's because the final thing that gets him is that he notices Mr. and Mrs. Granger, who are just straight up muggles here in Diagon Alley, and what he says is, "The company you keep, Weasley, and I thought your family could sink no lower." So it's like, that's the line that he crosses, is like insulting the Grangers. Yes.
Yeah.
That, I guess, like that is to Mr. Weasley like worth fighting over.
Yes, it's like,
which
nope.
I suppose.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
which is also sort of like it feeds into the greater theme of the book, because as far as Lucius is concerned, like, yes, the diary will open the Chamber of Secrets, but then the goal of the Chamber of Secrets will be to purge the school of Muggleborns.
Yeah.
So that could be his real target here.
Yeah, so I mean, when you look at it through that lens, you're exactly right. The overall themes, this one page, it has like an imprint of the theme of the entire book.
Right, yeah.
Like illustrated on it.
Right.
That's
and is
a good
that
point.
like... It is. I mean, that's really what they're trying to, I think, is being set up is just like the weird, like, wizarding racism between purebloods and, like, non-purebloods.
Yes, which is just, it's like, it's even so kind of like just backwards in its own weird way, just because there's so few purebloods altogether that, like, the amount of, like, limiting that this does on your ability to, like expand or anything. It's like you there are like as of the 1920s there were the Sacred 28. There are 28 families that fall under this category.
And like which the Weasleys do.
The Weasleys do, yeah.
And they still don't like them.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know, yeah, it's just like it feels like it would be. It feels like the system would break itself down, because surely anyone anywhere along the line would be like, no, I would like to just go and date somebody else because I like them.
Right.
You know, or whatever, and merge these families in this particular way. And like that would break it down to even fewer people who had maintained this absolute pure blood status.
Right.
Like,
and that's basically what's happened to the Gaunts when you meet them.
Yes, exactly.
It's like they've just like sort of like problematically like inbred.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that pretty much brings the chapter to a close.
Yes, it kind of does. That brings us to the end of Flourish and Blotts, a very eventful chapter that sets up all sorts of stuff for books to come. All this, I love all the stuff in Nocturne Alley. That was I never noticed the poison. You know, that like, oh my gosh, like even the poison is there.
Even the poison.
Like that which means that like Draco sort of successfully poisons Ron. I guess that's always true. But like with it, like from this scene, you know.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Like,
yeah.
And I mean, I don't see any reason why not to assume that it's the same poison when everything else that we see inside of this chapter is used.
Yeah,
in his efforts.
used in his efforts, and because the poisons literally used to belong to his family.
Yes, yeah.
like as far as he's, I'm sure concerned, maybe it's rightfully his poison.
Right. Yeah. Right.
That's my family's poison.
Sure. Why not?
Yeah. Why not?
There we go. All right. Well, Jay, do we have a review?
We absolutely do, Ben. All right. So I have a review here. I for some reason did not copy the person's name, which is unfortunate, but sometimes it jarbles it anyway. So whatever. A review is so fantastic. I love it. Hey, I've watched your YouTube channel since forever, and I love this way of looking at the book. There are so many things I never knew. Thank you. I have a question. Why do you think the Dursleys don't want Harry to leave? They hate him. Don't they want him gone?
I often am confused by this exact thing,
right,
as well.
Yes,
where it's almost like they should be leaping for joy that Harry's accepted to Hogwarts.
Right.
It's like, you don't have to deal with him. You don't have to pay to go to some other school. You don't have any responsibilities really attached to him at all whatsoever.
Right.
Like,
it's 8 weeks a year.
Right. Like, this should be such a win for you. It's like, hey, turns out all of our troubles are gone. Like, this kid will barely be an inconvenience on our life anymore.
Right.
But hilariously, the thing that comes to mind is almost from like the TV show Survivor, where it's not uncommon in the show for players to strategically keep somebody, like if you're a physical threat in challenges, oftentimes people will want to keep the even more physical threat in the game so that like as a shield.
Yeah.
Because everybody's like, well, they're all looking at that person who's like a little bit bigger, a little bit faster, a little bit stronger than me. Nobody's paying attention to me over here.
Right.
But like once, like, you know, so if I can keep them around as like a perceived bigger threat, then, you know, like,
then they're not going to get rid of me because we got to keep getting rid of that guy. Exactly. But I'll keep throwing votes off that guy because he's not a threat to win.
Exactly. Yeah. But so I almost wonder at all if like Harry is this bizarre like unifier to the Dursleys that allows them to all like each other that much more, in contrast to how much they all agree that they hate Harry.
It's like a way for them to reinforce to Dudley their ideals, because they can always point at Harry as what's wrong with the world.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. So it's like all of a sudden, if Harry's not there and it's just the three of them together, then they are absolutely forced to like, and these are people with opinions.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yeah.
You know, and if they have to direct those opinions at each other in any way, that can very quickly become harmful.
Right. It's like they're negative people, but Harry becomes the source of all of their the outlet for all of their negativity. So it never gets redirected at the other people in the house.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yes.
That's an interesting thought. Yeah. And then I think on top of that, they're like, we talked about it earlier, how like Petunia has that like sterile environment, like non-functionally so. Like there's clean because clean helps you live a nicer life, and then there's clean because like it gives you the sense of like superiority or something.
Right.
Like my house is cleaner than yours.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is also clean. And so I think to them it's like the idea, like if someone found out about Harry, it'd be the same. Like they're afraid that having Harry there and knowing about magic is like so much more likely to draw any sort of like bad perception to themselves as like not normal.
Wait, hold on. So I'm trying to follow your logic here.
Right.
So like by having Harry there, why would that not make them want him to leave?
You're right. Maybe I'm defeating myself in logic here.
Because my thinking similar to
I think because they know he has to come back each year.
Okay.
And so every year he goes back. Every time he goes to school and comes back, he's going to know that much more magic, which could expose them in some way.
That's true. That's true. Like as his powers grow, such will the likelihood
the threat of their normality.
It could interfere with their exposure, which eventually it does
affect
their normality.
I mean, even in this book, it already has.
Yes, indeed.
It's like otherwise, Mr. Dursley probably just successfully sells the drills. They get the vacation home,
right? And they don't have a flying car outside of their house in the middle of the night.
Which actually, even that though isn't fair, because like you know what, it's not really Harry's fault. Harry doesn't do anything.
That's also true.
Yeah,
that's also true. My other thinking would largely just be like the outside grapevine talk, if you will, around if people of the neighborhood knew that the Dursleys had taken Harry in, and they win some points for that like generosity. But then if all of a sudden that kid disappears, then it leads to questions.
Right.
It's like, well, what happened to the kid?
Yeah. Now they have to deal with like, weren't you taking care of another kid?
Yes. It's like, wasn't there somebody else who lives? Because that's the other thing that always surprises me, that they let him go to school in like oversized baggy clothes and stuff. It's like, that must look bad on your reputation.
Right. Yes.
Like,
doesn't it?
People like the teachers are going to see that you are sending this kid to school in oversized and old and worn out clothes in a way that like is so different from how you're sending the other kid from your household to school.
Yeah.
Like,
right. It does seem like that would come back to bite them quickly.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, not to compare, like, because it feels like such a like drastically different things, but I'm speaking purely through the eyes of the Dursleys. But like, they're so uptight about like the like height of their grass, the perfectness of their hedges and landscaping, and the cleanliness of their house and stuff like that. It's like, surely they must be aware that this is a way in which you can be judged, which is how you care for your wards.
Right. But like, I also don't see anything wrong with the way they treat Dudley either.
Right. Yes. Also true. Also true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it's like, maybe we're demanding too much. We're expecting reasonable things from unreasonable people.
That's true. Yeah. It's like you're trying to be like, because you know what? If they were even just regular nice people, they'd be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. No big deal.
Even if they were lightly inconvenienced, it'd probably still be fine.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But anyway, so there you go. It does seem like this eventually is like a plot point, I think, for going to the Quidditch World Cup too, where Mr. Weasley's like, well, or not Mr. Weasley, Mr. Dursley is like, oh gosh, going to the World Cup will make you happy, so I don't want you to do it, but also you won't be here, which would be great. So what do I do?
Yeah, so frustrating. So frustrating. Come on, man. Like, it's like if you're just upset at the prospect of some other individual being happy at all.
Oh, I know. It's like, what's at war there is like his desire to make someone else happy versus making himself happy. And he is letting, like, it is a real contest of, like, he almost lets make someone unhappy win.
Yes, I know. Yeah. It's like, that is ridiculous.
That is terrible. Like,
let it go,
yeah,
man.
Dude.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So anyway, that's a good question. Good question. It is a little nonsensical, but the Dursleys are pretty nonsensical themselves. But that's going to do it for us for Chapter 4, Flourish and Blotts. Make sure you join us next time as we venture into Chapter 5. We're finally going to make it to Hogwarts as we travel into the Whomping Willow next time here on Through the Griffin Door.